The Vashan High Conclave gathered in the Chamber of Final Decisions, a vast hall carved from the bones of a dead moon. 12 figures sat in floating chairs arranged in a perfect circle. Their gray skin reflected the cold light of holographic displays showing a small blue planet spinning slowly in the darkness of space. "The humans have reached the threshold," announced Counselor Vreth, her voice flat and certain. "Our observation probes confirm they will achieve faster-than-light capability within 50 years. Perhaps less." The other counselors studied the images of Earth. Cities glittered across the continents. Satellites orbited in careful patterns. Radio signals leaked into space, carrying music and voices and the constant chatter of a species that did not know it was being watched. "They are aggressive," said Counselor Morith, the eldest among them. "Our behavioral analysts have studied their history, war after war, conflict after conflict. They fight over resources, over territory, over ideas. They even fight over which invisible gods they worship." "All young species fight," replied Counselor Thesson. "We fought among ourselves once." "We learned wisdom," Morath said. "We unified. We brought order to the chaos of the galaxy. These humans show no sign of such evolution. They remain fractured, tribal, dangerous." The holographic display shifted to show projection models, population growth curves, technological development timelines, military capability estimates. Every line pointed upward, growing steeper with each passing decade. "If we permit them to reach the stars," Vreth said, "they will become a problem that cannot be easily solved. Better to address this now, while they remain confined to their single world." No one in the chamber spoke against this reasoning. The Veshan hegemony had maintained galactic order for 4,000 years through a simple principle: eliminate threats before they become threatening. 847 species had been cleansed from existence under this doctrine. Some had been genuinely dangerous. Most had simply been inconvenient. The vote was unanimous, as it always was. The cleansing fleet would be dispatched to sterilize Earth. 900 warships departed from the Veshan core worlds 3 months later. Admiral Kesoth commanded the fleet from the Bridge of the Absolute Certainty, a dreadnought whose weapons had reduced entire continents to glass on 17 different worlds. He considered this mission routine. The humans had no defenses capable of threatening his ships. They had no allies to call upon. They did not even know the hegemony existed. The journey took 6 weeks through folded space. Admiral Kesoth spent the time reviewing intelligence reports on human civilization. He found their art primitive, their technology laughable, their social structures chaotic. He felt no hatred toward them. He felt nothing at all. They were simply a task to be completed, a line item on the hegemony's endless list of galactic maintenance. The fleet emerged from fold space at the edge of Earth's solar system. Admiral Kesoth ordered a full tactical scan, expecting to catalog the defensive positions of primitive orbital stations and perhaps a few armed satellites. The scan returned nothing. "Expand the search radius," Kesoth ordered. "Focus on the inner planets." His officers worked their consoles with growing confusion. Minutes passed. The scan covered the entire system, sweeping past gas giants and asteroid belts and the small rocky worlds clustered near the yellow sun. "Admiral," the sensor officer finally reported, "there are no human vessels anywhere in this system. No stations, no satellites, no signals of any kind." Kesoth leaned forward in his command chair. "What about the planet itself?" The display shifted to show Earth in detail. The oceans remained blue, the continents remained green and brown, but the cities were dark. No lights glittered on the night side. No aircraft moved through the atmosphere. No ships crossed the seas. "Life signs?" Kesoth asked. "Minimal. Animal populations only. No concentrated human settlements detected anywhere on the surface." The bridge crew exchanged uncertain glances. This was not what they had expected. The intelligence reports were only 50 years old. A species could not simply vanish in 50 years. "They must have destroyed themselves," suggested Vice Admiral Thesick. "Perhaps a war, a plague, some catastrophe of their own making." Kesoth considered this explanation. It would not be the first time a species had exterminated itself before the hegemony could do it for them. Primitive civilizations were fragile things. prone to self-destruction when they discovered weapons more powerful than their wisdom could safely manage. It matters little, Kesoth decided. We will proceed with the cleansing regardless. Whatever remains on that world dies today. I want no chance of recovery, no possibility that some hidden population might rebuild. Full planetary sterilization. The fleet moved into position, 900 warships forming a sphere around the silent Earth. Weapon systems powered up, filling space with the hum of accumulated energy. In minutes, those weapons would release enough firepower to strip the atmosphere from the planet and boil the oceans into steam. Admiral Kesoth felt a small measure of disappointment. He had expected at least some resistance. A final desperate broadcast begging for mercy. A few primitive rockets fired in hopeless defiance. Something to mark the end of this species. Instead, there was only silence. "All ships report ready," his weapons officer announced. Kesoth opened his mouth to give the order that would end humanity forever. The sensor console screamed an alarm. "Contact!" the sensor officer shouted. "Single vessel, decloaking directly in the center of our formation." The holographic display flickered and updated. Where there had been empty space moments before, a ship now existed. It was small compared to the Vashon warships surrounding it, perhaps the size of a light cruiser. Its hull was smooth and black, without visible weapons or engines or any features that Vashon technology could identify. "Impossible," Vice Admiral Thesic whispered. "Nothing can penetrate our sensor grid. Nothing can simply appear from nowhere." "Destroy it," Kesoth ordered. "All ships fire at will." 900 warships turned their weapons on the single intruder. Beams of concentrated energy lanced through space. Missiles erupted from launch tubes. Kinetic rounds accelerated to a significant fraction of light speed. Every shot missed, not deflected, not absorbed. The weapons simply passed through the space where the ship appeared to be and continued into the void beyond. The vessel remained exactly where it was, untouched, undamaged, seemingly unaware that it was under attack. "What is happening?" Kesoth demanded. "I do not understand," the weapons officer replied, her voice shaking. "Our targeting systems show direct hits. Every shot should have connected, but the ship is not there. Or it is there, but also not there. The readings make no sense." The alien vessel began to transmit. The message arrived in perfect Vashon, spoken in a calm voice that carried no anger, no fear, no urgency of any kind. It played on every speaker on every ship in the fleet simultaneously. It broadcast to every communications relay in the system, where it would be repeated and amplified and sent racing toward Veshan space at the speed of light. "People of the Veshan hegemony," the voice said, "you have come to our world with weapons ready. You have come to end our species as you have ended so many others. You did not ask what we wanted. You did not offer terms or seek negotiation. You simply decided that we should not exist, and you acted on that decision." Admiral Kesoth tried to cut the transmission. His communications officer reported that the ship's signal was overriding every frequency, using technology that should not exist. "We know what you are," the voice continued. "We know what you have done. We have watched you for 30 years. We have learned your language, studied your history, cataloged your crimes. 847 species exterminated, trillions of lives erased from existence. And for what? To maintain your dominion, to ensure that no one might ever challenge your power." The black ship rotated slowly in place, as if surveying the fleet that surrounded it. "You believed we were primitive. You believed we were trapped on our single world, ignorant of your existence. You were wrong. We left Earth a generation ago. We built in secret. We prepared for this moment, the moment you would come to destroy us." Kesoth found his voice at last. "You are one ship. We are 900. Whatever trick you have used to evade our weapons, it cannot protect you forever. Surrender now and perhaps the Conclave will grant you a quick death." The transmission paused. When it resumed, the voice carried something that might have been sorrow. "We did not come here to fight you, Admiral. We came here to deliver a message. You had a choice. You could have left us alone. You could have approached us in peace. You could have decided that this time, just once, you would not choose extermination. But you came with weapons armed and murder in your hearts. You have made your choice. We acknowledge it. What does that mean? Keseth demanded. What message? Speak plainly. The message, the voice replied, is not for you. It is for everyone else. The black ship began to pulse with light, cycling through frequencies that Veshan eyes could not perceive, but Veshan's sensors detected clearly. The pulse expanded outward in all directions, passing through the fleet, passing through the solar system, racing toward the distant stars at impossible speed. Admiral Keseth did not understand what he was seeing. He would not understand for several hours when reports began arriving from across Veshan space describing what the pulse contained. But he felt a cold certainty settling in his chest, the certainty that something had changed, that something had ended, that his empire had just made an enemy unlike any it had ever faced. The human vessel continued its silent broadcast, hanging motionless in space, waiting for the galaxy to listen. 30 years before the Veshan fleet arrived at Earth, a young physicist named Elena Vasquez was working late in her laboratory when her computer detected something that should have been impossible. The signal was faint, barely distinguishable from background radiation. It came from somewhere beyond the orbit of Neptune, from a region of space that should have been empty. Elena ran the analysis 3 times before she believed it. The signal was artificial, it was intelligent, and it was watching Earth. She reported her findings to her supervisor. Within hours, that supervisor had contacted government officials. Within days, those officials had gathered the most powerful leaders on the planet into a secure bunker deep beneath a mountain. Elena stood before them, a nobody from a small research station, explaining that humanity was not alone in the universe, that they were being observed by something beyond their understanding, that the observers were using technology so advanced it might as well be magic. "What do they want?" asked a general whose chest was covered in medals. "I do not know," Elena admitted. "The probe is passive. It only watches. It does not communicate. Can we capture it? Study it? We could try, but I believe that would be a mistake." The room fell silent. Elena felt the weight of every eye upon her. "If they are watching us," she explained, "then they can see everything we do. They know our military capabilities. They know our technology. They know how weak we are compared to whatever built that probe. If we attack it or try to capture it, we reveal ourselves as hostile. We give them a reason to act against us." "So we do nothing?" another official demanded. "We simply accept that aliens are spying on us?" Elena took a deep breath. "I suggest we do something much harder than fighting. I suggest we hide. I suggest we let them believe we are exactly what we appear to be, a primitive species trapped on a single world. And while they watch the puppet show we put on for them, we work in secret to prepare for the day they decide what to do with us." The debate lasted for weeks. Some argued for immediate disclosure, bringing the world together against a common threat. Others wanted to destroy the probe and hope for the best. A few suggested trying to communicate, to reach out in peace. In the end, fear won. The governments of Earth agreed to maintain the illusion of ignorance while building their true capabilities in darkness. The next 3 decades saw humanity transform in ways its observers never detected. On Earth, life continued as normal. Cities grew. Conflicts erupted and were resolved. Technology advanced at the expected pace, following the trajectory the alien probe would predict. Humans launched satellites and space stations and sent rovers to Mars. They argued about politics and worried about the climate and lived their lives without any knowledge of the secret being kept from them. But in hidden places across the solar system, a different story unfolded. The first human faster-than-light ship launched in secret 5 years after Elena's discovery. It was a crewed vessel, unstable and dangerous, crewed by volunteers who knew they might never return. They jumped to a star system 3 light-years away, surveyed a barren moon, and jumped back. The journey that should have taken centuries was completed in hours. Word of this success spread through the classified networks that now connected Earth governments. For the first time in human history, every nation worked together on a single project. The divisions of language and culture and ideology faded before a truth none could deny. They were prey in a universe of predators, and only unity could save them. The exodus began quietly. Families were selected based on skills humanity would need. Engineers, doctors, farmers, scientists. They were told the truth, given the choice to participate, and those who agreed vanished from their old lives. Cover stories explained their disappearances. Accidents, relocations, witness protection programs. Nobody suspected that thousands of people were leaving Earth forever. The colonies grew on worlds the alien probe would never think to examine. Barren moons of gas giants, asteroids hidden in dense nebulae, planets orbiting dim red stars that the probe's builders had surveyed and dismissed as worthless. Humanity spread across dozens of systems, building infrastructure, establishing industry, becoming impossible to exterminate with a single strike. But survival was not enough. Humanity needed to understand the threat they faced. Intelligence operations began in the second decade. Human ships, small and fast and shielded against detection, slipped into systems controlled by the probe's builders. They listened to communications. They observed military movements. They pieced together a picture of galactic civilization that filled them with horror. The Vashon hegemony ruled 4,000 star systems through absolute dominance. They had eliminated every species they considered threatening, and they considered most species threatening. Their fleets enforced a peace that was really just silence, the silence of the grave, the silence of extinction. But the Vashon were not alone in the galaxy. Dozens of other empires existed, all living under the hegemony's shadow. They paid tribute. They obeyed Vashon laws. They watched as the hegemony exterminated any species that might have been their allies. Human intelligence operatives learned the names of these subject peoples. The Karathi, whose homeworld had been bombarded into submission 4 centuries ago. The Mwenal, forced to serve as soldiers in Vashon armies. The Tessic, who had surrendered peacefully and been decimated anyway as a warning to others. Hundreds of species, billions of individuals, all living in fear, all quietly hoping that someday, somehow, the hegemony would fall. This knowledge changed everything. Elena Vasquez, now decades older but still guiding humanity's response, gathered the leadership council in a hidden station orbiting a brown dwarf. "We have 2 choices," she told them. "We can build a fleet to match the Vashon. With our technology, we might succeed. In perhaps a century, we could challenge them directly." "That would mean war," a military commander observed. "A war that could last generations, that could cost billions of lives." "Yes," Elena agreed. "And even if we won, we would become them. We would rule the galaxy through the same fear and violence they use. We would have saved humanity by destroying everything that makes us human." "What is the alternative?" Elena activated a holographic display. It showed a network of lines connecting stars across the galaxy, a web of light that pulsed and flowed like a living thing. "We do not build a weapon," she said. "We build a key. The Vashon maintain power because they control information and technology. They keep their subjects ignorant and dependent. They make sure no one can challenge them by making sure no one has the tools to try." She gestured and the display expanded. "We give those tools to everyone. FTL drives, shield technology, weapon systems, everything the Vashon have hoarded, everything they have used to maintain their dominance. We spread it across the galaxy, freely, without conditions. We break the hegemony's monopoly on power." "The Vashon will not simply accept this," another council member protested. "They will attack us with everything they have." "Let them try." Elena smiled, and there was something fierce in her expression. "We have spent 30 years developing technologies they do not know exist. Our ships can become invisible to their sensors. Our defenses can make their weapons useless. They cannot destroy what they cannot hit, and they cannot hit what they cannot find." "But why would the other species believe us? Why would they trust information from an unknown source?" "Because we will give them proof." Elena's display changed to show recordings, documents, communications intercepts. "We have cataloged every genocide the hegemony has committed, every extermination order, every casual decision to end a species. We will show the galaxy what the Vashon truly are, and we will show them that they do not have to accept it any longer." The council debated for days. In the end, they approved Elena's plan. Humanity would not fight a war of conquest. They would fight a war of liberation. They would not defeat the hegemony by becoming its equal in violence. They would defeat it by making violence obsolete. The preparations took another decade. Ships were built, not warships but relay stations, communication hubs designed to broadcast across the galaxy. Technology packages were assembled, complete with instructions simple enough for any species to follow. Evidence was compiled, organized, verified, made undeniable. And then came word that the Veshan had finally made their decision. A fleet was being assembled. Earth was the target. Elena Vasquez, now an old woman but still sharp, still burning with the same purpose that had driven her since that night in her laboratory, gave the final order. "Let them come," she said. "Let them commit themselves completely. Let them bring their fleet to the home we abandoned, thinking they will find us helpless. And when they arrive, when they stand ready to complete their genocide, we will show them what their choice has earned." The single human vessel that would greet the Veshan fleet was already in position, cloaked, waiting. It had been waiting for 30 years. It could wait a little longer. Admiral Kesoth watched the black ship hang motionless in space and felt an emotion he had not experienced in decades. Uncertainty. "Concentrate fire," he ordered. "All forward batteries, maximum yield." The absolute certainty unleashed enough energy to crack a small moon. The beam passed through the human vessel without effect, continuing into the void until it dissipated into nothing. "The ship is not there," his science officer reported, her voice trembling. "Or rather, it is there and not there simultaneously. Our sensors show it occupying multiple positions at once. We cannot target what exists in quantum superposition." Kesoth slammed his fist against his command chair. "That is impossible. No species has ever achieved stable probability manipulation. The physics simply do not allow it." "The humans appear to disagree with our physics, Admiral." Around the fleet, other ships were attempting their own attacks. Missiles exploded harmlessly in empty space. Kinetic rounds passed through shadows. Energy weapons struck nothing but vacuum. 900 of the most powerful warships in the galaxy surrounded a single vessel, and they could not touch it. The human transmission continued, calm and patient, seemingly unconcerned with the firepower being directed against it. "We understand your confusion," the voice said. "You have spent 4,000 years believing you represent the peak of galactic civilization. You have crushed every species that might have challenged that belief. You have grown comfortable in your certainty." New images appeared on every display in the fleet, overriding Veshan control systems with casual ease. The images showed documents, records, communications intercepts dating back centuries. "We want you to see what we have seen," the human voice continued. "We want you to understand why we are here." Admiral Kesoth watched the evidence scroll across his screens. He saw orders signed by the High Conclave authorizing extermination campaigns. He saw military reports describing the systematic destruction of planetary populations. He saw private communications between Veshan leaders, laughing about species they had rendered extinct, debating which civilizations to eliminate next. "This proves nothing," Kesoth said. "We maintain galactic order. We prevent chaos. The species we have cleansed would have become threats if left unchecked." "Would they?" The human voice carried something that might have been sadness. "Let us show you what you have destroyed." The images changed. Now they showed the species the hegemony had exterminated, not as threats or statistics, but as civilizations. The Arinthian, who had composed symphonies that made listeners weep with joy. The Velith, who had developed a philosophy of universal compassion that was spreading peacefully across their region of space. The thousand peoples of the Drift, nomads who had never claimed a single world but wandered between the stars in harmony with all they encountered. 847 species, the human said, trillions of individuals, countless possibilities for what they might have become, what they might have contributed, what they might have taught us all. Gone, because you were afraid, because you could not imagine any response to difference except destruction. Kesoth felt nothing. These were ancient histories, decisions made by leaders long dead. He had not ordered those exterminations. He had simply inherited their legacy. "Your guilt does not concern us," the human voice said, as if reading his thoughts. "We did not come here to punish you for the past. We came here to end your future." The transmission pulse expanded outward, carrying information at speeds that should have been impossible. But this time, Kessuth's science officer identified its destination. "Admiral," she said, her gray skin pale with shock, "the signal is propagating toward Veshan space, toward all of Veshan space. And not only that, it is reaching the tributary systems, the Karathi, the Mwenal, the Tessic, every species under our dominion." "What is it transmitting?" The science officer's hands shook as she processed the data. "Everything, Admiral. FTL drive specifications, shield harmonics, weapon designs, manufacturing processes. 3 decades of human technological development, freely distributed to every species capable of receiving the signal." Kessuth finally understood. The trap was not the single ship before him. The trap was where his fleet was not. "Contact the homeworld," he ordered. "Emergency priority. Communications are being jammed, Admiral. Only the human signal can penetrate. Then we return immediately. All ships prepare for emergency fold space jump." "Admiral," his navigation officer interrupted, "fold space calculations indicate arrival in Veshan core space in approximately 6 weeks. By then, any species that received the human transmission will have had time to begin manufacturing the technologies it contained." The weight of this settled over Kessuth like a burial shroud. For 4,000 years, the hegemony had maintained dominance by keeping its subjects technologically inferior. Now that advantage was gone. Every species that had ever suffered under Vishan rule now had the tools to fight back. "You begin to understand," the human voice observed. "You came here to exterminate a primitive species. Instead, you left your empire undefended at the precise moment its subjects finally gained the means to resist. We did not need to destroy your fleet. We simply needed to occupy it while the galaxy changed around you." Kessuth stood from his command chair. He approached the main display, staring at the black ship that hung untouchable in the center of his formation. "Why?" he demanded. "Why would you help our enemies? You have given technology to species who may use it against you as readily as against us. You have created chaos where there was order." "Your order was extinction," the human replied. "Your peace was the silence of the grave. We chose chaos because chaos at least contains the possibility of something better." "You are naive. These species will tear each other apart. Without the hegemony to maintain stability, the galaxy will descend into war." "Perhaps. Or perhaps they will learn to cooperate. Perhaps they will build something we cannot imagine. That is the nature of freedom, Admiral. It contains risk, but it also contains hope." Kessuth laughed bitterly. "Hope? You speak of hope while my empire burns. You speak of freedom while handing weapons to species who will use them for conquest." "They might," the human acknowledged. "And if they do, we will oppose them as we have opposed you. We do not seek to rule the galaxy. We seek to ensure that no one rules it. Every species will defend itself. Every species will have the means to make conquest too costly to attempt. It will not be perfect. It will not be peaceful, but it will be alive." The transmission paused. When it resumed, the voice had changed subtly. It was still calm, still measured, but now it carried a weight that had not been there before. "We have one final message to deliver, not to your fleet, not to your conclave, to the Veshan people themselves, those who did not choose this path, those who followed orders because they saw no alternative. Those who wondered, perhaps secretly, whether there might be another way." New images filled the displays. They showed human settlements, hidden colonies that the Veshan had never known existed. Humans and aliens working together. Species the hegemony had dismissed as inferior, now building ships and stations alongside their human partners. "We offer you a choice," as the human said. "The hegemony is ending. Nothing you do can prevent this. But how it ends remains to be determined. You can fight to preserve dominion that can no longer be maintained. You can spend the lives of your children defending the indefensible, or you can choose differently. You can surrender," the voice continued, "not to us, not to any conquering army. You can surrender to the possibility that your species might become something other than what it has been. You can help build a galaxy where no one fears extinction, where strength does not mean dominance, where different species can coexist without one destroying the others." Admiral Kessuth stood frozen before the display. Around him, his bridge crew had stopped working. They were listening. Every being in the fleet was listening. We know this is difficult to imagine. Your entire civilization is built on the assumption that safety requires supremacy, that the only way to survive is to ensure no one else can threaten you. But we offer you proof that another way exists. We have lived in secret for 30 years. We could have built weapons to match yours. We could have prepared a war of mutual destruction. Instead, we prepared this: liberation without conquest, victory without genocide, an end to the hegemony without an end to the Veshan. The black ship pulsed with light one final time. The choice is yours. We will not make it for you. We have done what we came here to do. The galaxy is watching. The galaxy is waiting. And for the first time in 4,000 years, the galaxy is free to decide its own future. The transmission ended. Admiral Kesoth stood alone with the weight of history pressing down upon him. Behind him, the first Veshan ship broke formation and began transmitting a surrender signal. Then another, then another. The Karathi homeworld of Keseth Prime had been a wounded place for 400 years. The Veshan bombardment had scarred the northern continent so deeply that nothing grew there still. Craters marked where cities had once stood. The survivors had rebuilt in the south, under the watchful eyes of Veshan occupation forces, forbidden from developing any technology that might allow them to resist. Elder Morvath was leading the evening prayers when the signal arrived. She was 212 years old, ancient even by Karathi standards. She remembered the bombardment. She remembered her mother carrying her through burning streets while ships darkened the sky above. She remembered the surrender, the occupation, the generations of humiliation that followed. She had never stopped believing that someday, somehow, things would change. The signal came through every communication device on the planet simultaneously. It bypassed Veshan security systems as if they did not exist. It spoke in perfect Karathi, the language the occupation forces had tried to suppress for centuries. "People of Kesath Prime," the voice said, "you do not know us. We are humans, a species the Veshan intended to exterminate. They failed, and we have come to give you a gift." The technical specifications followed: faster than light drives, shield generators, weapon systems. Everything needed to build ships that could challenge Veshan warships. Everything the Karathi had been forbidden from developing. Everything they had dreamed of for 400 years. Elder Morvath watched her people receive the signal. She saw the shock in their faces give way to something she had not seen in her lifetime. Hope. "Is this real?" her assistant asked. "How can we know this is not a Veshan trick?" "Look at the evidence," Morvath replied. "Look at what they have sent. The records of Veshan crimes, the proof of every genocide. The Veshan would never reveal their own atrocities to trap us. This is real." Within hours, the Karathi had begun manufacturing their first components. The Veshan garrison, suddenly aware that their subjects possessed information they should never have had, attempted to restore order. They sent troops to secure the factories where the new technology was being built. The Karathi were waiting for them. 400 years of rage, 400 years of patience, 400 years of quiet preparation for a day they had thought would never come. The garrison fell in less than a day. The orbital platforms followed within a week. By the time word reached the nearest Veshan fleet, the Karathi had launched their first FTL-capable warship. Similar scenes played out across the galaxy. The Mwenal, bred for war but forced to fight for their oppressors, turned their weapons on their Veshan officers. Entire regiments mutinied simultaneously, seizing ships and weapons and armor that had been designed to keep them enslaved. The Mwenal did not need to learn how to fight. They only needed permission. The Tessic, peaceful by nature, who had surrendered to the hegemony hoping to avoid bloodshed and been decimated anyway, now built defenses around their remaining worlds. They did not seek revenge. They only wanted to ensure that no fleet could ever threaten them again. The human technology gave them that security. The Veshan hegemony did not collapse instantly. It fractured, like glass struck by a hammer, cracks spreading outward from a central point of impact. Some Veshan worlds surrendered immediately. Their populations had grown tired of endless conquest, tired of being hated by every species they encountered, tired of living in an empire built on bones. These worlds opened their communications to their former subjects, sent diplomats to negotiate peaceful transitions, began the slow work of building something new. Other Vashon worlds chose to fight. They could not imagine any existence except dominance. They had been raised to believe that strength meant conquest, that safety meant supremacy, that mercy was weakness. These worlds gathered their forces and struck out against the uprising, determined to restore order through overwhelming violence. Civil war erupted within Vashon space itself. Admiral Keseth brought his fleet home to find his civilization tearing itself apart. The High Conclave had fragmented into rival factions. Some counselors had been executed by their own guards. Others had fled to fortified positions, broadcasting calls for resistance that found fewer listeners each day. Keseth's fleet was the largest coherent Vashon force remaining. Both sides demanded his loyalty. Reformers promised positions of power in a new government. Traditionalists reminded him of his duty to the hegemony he had served his entire life. He chose neither. Instead, he gathered his captains in the tactical center of the absolute certainty and spoke words he never thought he would say. The hegemony is dead. Fighting to restore it will only prolong the suffering. Fighting to create a new version of it will only plant seeds for the next uprising. We must choose a different path. What path? Demanded Captain Thesic, who had served under Keseth for 30 years. Surrender? Allow ourselves to be conquered by the very species we once ruled? Not surrender, Keseth said. Transformation. The humans offered us a choice. They said we could help build a galaxy where no species fears extinction. I did not believe them when they spoke. But I have watched what has happened since. The Karathi have not launched revenge attacks on Veshan civilians. The Mwenal have not massacred prisoners. Even the Tesic, who had every reason to hate us, have only defended themselves. Give them time, Thesic said bitterly. They will show their true nature eventually. Perhaps, or perhaps they remember what it was like to be helpless, and they refuse to inflict that helplessness on others. Keseth looked around at his captains. We have a chance to be something other than what we were. We have a chance to show the galaxy that Veshan can learn, can grow, can become partners instead of masters. If we do not take that chance now, it will never come again. The fleet voted. It was close, closer than Keseth had expected. But in the end, the majority chose to follow him into uncertainty rather than march back into a war they could not win. Keseth's ships began providing humanitarian aid to Veshan worlds devastated by the Civil War. They escorted refugee transports. They defended civilian populations from both Veshan traditionalists and opportunistic raiders from other species. They did not ask for recognition or reward. They simply did what needed to be done. Word spread. Other Veshan commanders, faced with impossible choices, heard what Keseth was doing and chose to join him. The fleet grew. Not as a conquering armada, but as a force for stability in a galaxy that had forgotten what stability without dominance looked like. The human relay ship remained at Earth, continuing its broadcasts. It offered technical assistance to any species that requested it. It transmitted updates on the progress of reconstruction efforts. It became a symbol of the new order emerging from the ashes of the old. 3 months after the signal first broadcast, a Veshan transport approached the relay ship. It carried no weapons. Its shields were lowered. It transmitted on open frequencies, hiding nothing. Admiral Keseth stood on the transport's bridge as it drew near the black vessel that had ended his civilization. Human ship, he broadcast. This is Admiral Keseth of the Veshan fleet. I request permission to speak with your representatives. The response came almost immediately. Permission granted, Admiral. We have been expecting you. A docking tube extended from the relay ship. Keseth walked it alone, his guards ordered to remain behind. He emerged into a chamber filled with soft light and comfortable furnishings designed to put visitors at ease. A human woman waited for him. She was old, her hair white, her face lined with decades of worry and purpose. But her eyes were sharp, and her posture was straight. Admiral Keseth, she said, I am Elena Vasquez. I suppose you could say I started all of this. Keseth studied her. This small, fragile-looking creature had orchestrated the downfall of an empire that had dominated the galaxy for 4,000 years. It seemed impossible, and yet here they were. Why? He asked. It was the only question that mattered. Elena smiled slightly. That is what everyone asks. Why did we help species who might become our enemies? Why did we free people who might use their freedom for violence? Why did we not simply destroy you when we had the chance? Yes, Kessa said. Why? Elena gestured for him to sit. He did, and she sat across from him. Because destruction was your way, she said simply, and we refused to become you. Kesath was silent for a long moment. What happens now, he finally asked. That depends on you, Elena replied. On all of you. The galaxy is remaking itself. Old hatreds are being tested against new possibilities. Some will choose war, some will choose peace. Some will try to build new empires on the ruins of yours. We will oppose them if they do. We will oppose anyone who tries to restore the cycle of dominance and extinction. And if we fail, if the chaos consumes everything, Elena's eyes held his, then we will have failed together. But at least we will have tried. At least we will have proven that another way was possible. That matters, Admiral. Even if it does not succeed, it matters. Kessa thought of his fleet, working to rebuild what the hegemony had broken. He thought of his people, learning to live without supremacy. He thought of the galaxy, vast and chaotic and terrifying in its freedom. I do not know if we can become what you hope, he admitted. Neither do we, Elena said. That is the nature of hope. It exists without certainty. It asks us to act anyway. She stood and extended her hand in a gesture Kesath did not recognize but somehow understood. He took it. Then we will try together, he said. Outside the viewport, the galaxy spun in endless darkness, waiting to see what its children would make of their freedom. 6 months after the signal changed everything, the galaxy gathered on neutral ground. The station had been constructed in a system that belonged to no one, orbiting a dim red star that the Veshan had never bothered to claim. Human engineers had built it in weeks, working alongside Karathi architects and Monal laborers and a dozen other species who had never cooperated on anything before. It was ugly, a collection of mismatched modules connected by pressurized tubes, but it was theirs, all of theirs. They called it the Forum. Representatives from 47 species filled its central chamber. Some had traveled for weeks to attend. Others had used the new FTL technology to arrive in days. They sat in sections arranged by nothing more than alphabetical order, a small detail that carried enormous meaning. No species claimed precedence. No species sat above another. The Veshan delegation was small, just 5 representatives led by Admiral Kesath. They sat among the others, neither honored nor shunned, simply present. Some species refused to look at them. Others made a point of greeting them cordially. Most simply waited to see what would happen. Elena Vasquez stood at the chamber's center. She had not asked for this position. She had not wanted it. But the other species had insisted that humanity speak first, and humanity had chosen her to speak for them. We are here, she began, because 6 months ago, the galaxy changed. An empire that had ruled through fear for 4,000 years lost its grip on power. Species that had been subjects became free, and now we must decide what to do with that freedom. She paused, looking around the chamber. So many different faces, so many different histories, so many reasons for anger and fear and hope. Humanity did not act alone. We could not have succeeded without the courage of those who rose up against their oppressors. We could not have built this station without the labor of dozens of species working together, and we cannot build a better future without all of you. A Karathi representative stood. Elder Morvath, 212 years old, had insisted on attending despite her failing health. You gave us weapons, she said, her voice still strong. You gave us the means to fight back. For that, my people are grateful. But weapons alone do not build peace. What do you offer now? Elena nodded. We offer ourselves. Human engineers to help rebuild what was destroyed. Human diplomats to mediate disputes. Human ships to protect those who cannot protect themselves. We ask nothing in return except one commitment. What commitment? Asked a Moinal general, his scarred face unreadable. No more genocides, Elena said simply. From anyone. For any reason. The cycle of extermination ends here. Species will defend themselves. Species will compete and conflict and disagree. But no species will attempt to wipe another from existence. If anyone tries, all others will oppose them. Silence fell over the chamber. It was a simple principle, but everyone present understood its implications. It meant that the Veshan would not be exterminated, despite what they had done. It meant that old hatreds could not be resolved through annihilation. It meant accepting limits on revenge. A Tessic diplomat rose. Her species had been nearly destroyed for the crime of surrendering peacefully. "You ask us to spare those who showed us no mercy," she said. "You ask us to protect those who butchered our children. How can you expect us to agree to this?" Elena met her eyes without flinching. "I do not expect it. I ask for it. And I ask because I know what the alternative leads to." The Vaitian exterminated 847 species because they believed that elimination was the only way to ensure safety. If we adopt the same belief, we become what we fought against. We prove that the hegemony's philosophy was correct all along. "Pretty word," the Tessic said, "but you did not lose 90% of your population to Vishan weapons." "No," Elena agreed. "We were lucky. We had time to prepare. We had technology that let us survive. Your people did not. Your suffering was greater than ours. Your anger is justified." She paused. "But anger is not justice, and revenge is not healing. You have the right to feel what you feel. I only ask that you not let those feelings dictate the future of the galaxy." The Tessic diplomat stared at her for a long moment. Then she sat down without another word. Admiral Kesseth stood. The chamber fell silent. Every eye turned to the representative of the species that had caused so much suffering. "My people have committed crimes that can never be undone," he said. His voice was steady, but those who looked closely could see his hands trembling. "We exterminated civilizations. We destroyed cultures. We murdered trillions of innocents because we believed our safety required their extinction." He paused, gathering himself. "I cannot apologize for actions I did not personally order. I cannot bring back those who were lost. I can only tell you what I have learned in these 6 months of chaos and transformation." He turned slowly, addressing the entire chamber. "We were wrong. Not just tactically wrong, not just strategically wrong, but morally wrong. We built our civilization on the belief that strength meant dominance, that safety required supremacy, that the only way to survive was to ensure no one else could threaten us. That belief led us to commit atrocities we convinced ourselves were necessary." His voice grew stronger. "The humans showed us another way, not through force but through example. They had the power to destroy us. They chose not to. They had every reason to hate us. They offered us hope instead. They proved that strength can mean protection rather than conquest. That safety can come from cooperation rather than dominance." He looked at Elena. "We do not deserve forgiveness. We will not ask for it. But we will spend whatever years remain to us trying to become something better than what we were. We will help rebuild what we destroyed. We will protect those we once threatened. We will teach our children that the old ways led only to suffering and that a different path is possible." He sat down. The chamber remained silent. Elder Morvath rose again. "I have hated the Vaishan for 200 years, she said. "I have dreamed of their destruction. I have prayed for the day when their worlds would burn as ours burned." She paused. "But I am old now. I have seen enough burning. I have had enough of death." She looked at Kesseth. "I do not forgive you. I cannot forgive you. But I can choose to build something other than monuments to hatred. I can choose to leave my grandchildren a galaxy where they do not have to fear extinction. That is worth more than revenge." One by one, other representatives spoke. Some expressed anger. Some expressed hope. Some simply asked practical questions about how the new order would function. But gradually, a consensus emerged. The commitment was adopted. No more genocides. Mutual defense against any species that attempted extermination. Cooperation without dominance. Freedom without chaos. It was not perfect. It would never be perfect. Old hatreds would flare. Conflicts would erupt. Some species would test the boundaries and have to be stopped. But the foundation was laid. The principle was established. The galaxy had chosen a different path. After the session ended, a young Vishan approached Elena. She was a historian named the Sarah, one of the few who had secretly documented the hegemony's crimes during its reign. Her records had helped build the case that humanity broadcast to the galaxy. "May I ask you something?" the Sarah said. Of course. Why did you not destroy us? You had the capability. You had the justification. No one would have blamed you. Why show mercy to those who plan to exterminate you? Elena considered the question. She had been asked it many times over the past 6 months, and she still struggled to articulate the answer. Because then we would have been you, she finally said. And we spent 30 years preparing specifically so we would not have to become the thing we opposed. The galaxy does not need another hegemony. It does not need another species ruling through fear, even if that species believes its rule is just. It needs proof that there is another way. Thesara was silent for a moment. Do you truly believe this will work? That all these species, with all their histories, all their grievances, can build something together? I do not know, Elena admitted, but I know that believing it is impossible guarantees failure. And I know that trying, even if we fail, matters. It proves that the possibility exists. It plants a seed that might grow into something we cannot imagine. She smiled, and despite her age, despite the weight of everything she had carried for 30 years, there was genuine warmth in it. That is the nature of hope, young one. It asks us to act without certainty. It asks us to build without knowing if the building will stand. But it is the only thing that makes building worthwhile. Thesara nodded slowly. Then she pulled out a recording device. I am writing a new history, she said. The history of what comes next. Would you tell me how it began? Elena looked out the viewport at the stars beyond. Somewhere among them, Earth spun on, empty but waiting. Humanity's original home, abandoned so that humanity could survive, might someday be reclaimed. Or it might remain a memorial to what they had almost lost. Either way, the story would continue. It began, Elena said, with a single ship decloaking, with a choice to end an era rather than end a species, with the belief that even the darkest history can give way to a brighter future. She turned back to Thesara. Write that down. Write all of it down, so that someday when this generation is gone and new challenges arise, those who come after us will remember. They will remember that when humanity faced extinction, we chose to light a candle rather than curse the darkness. They will remember that when we had the power to destroy our enemies, we chose to free them instead. Thesara's recording device hummed softly, capturing every word. And what should I call this history? She asked. Elena thought for a moment. Call it The Day the Galaxy Woke Up. Call it the story of how one species chose to trust that others could become better than they had been. Call it whatever you want. She smiled again, looking out at the stars where 100 species were building something new together. Just make sure you include the ending, the real ending, the one we are still writing every day together. Outside the forum, ships from dozens of worlds came and went, carrying diplomats and engineers and ordinary citizens who had never dreamed they would travel between the stars. The galaxy was vast and chaotic and filled with uncertainty, but for the first time in 4,000 years, it was also filled with possibility. And that, Elena knew, was enough. That was everything.